Hi, my name's Dirk Sneeman. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Adaptive Crew based out of Toronto. And joining me on this call in the presentation is our Chief Technology Officer, Linton Grice. He's also based out of Toronto. What we're going to be doing today is that we'll be presenting and discussing what we have learned to or understand to be the perfect stack in the SAP ecosystem. We are also going to discuss, as we go through this presentation, some of the operational efficiencies and insights that we have developed over time working in this ecosystem. During our presentation, I will be using sports analogies. These sports analogies will hopefully help drive some of the points home that we have. When you have a sports team, the one thing you have to do is you have to pick the right players, the talented players. You need talented players and you need them for different positions on the field. So that's the most important part. However, even if you pick the best team of talented players, if you play them in the wrong position with the wrong strategy, that's not going to work out. So what you need is a team of good coaches and support staff around this team so that you can get them in peak physical fitness, you can get them onto the game plan, and you can coach them and manage them through not only the first games, but you can get them all through the season as well. So that would be your experienced staff, which includes your coaches, etc., which the analogy really is to your business users, the right systems integrators. You need the right people around. Even if you pick the best technology products, you still need the best people to install it, update it, and run it for you. And then obviously you need a good game plan. You need to understand how these things fit together, because you want to make sure each player is on the field at the right time. When a ball gets moved or kicked, the other player needs to know that the ball is going to be in that position. As Wayne Gretzky says, you got to skate to where the puck is going to be, not where the puck is. So getting that game plan right is really important. So that's kind of your design, deploy, and test into production. Then we get the last part is when we're on game day or in the season, because you'll have multiple games in a season, you really need to understand not only that you've got the right team on the field, but you have to keep monitoring that team. So as we know it, people get injured on a field. People's performance on the day might not be the way you want it. A lot of athletes wear wearables so that they can be replaced on the field. And we have the same with technology. Technology should be monitored the whole time. So if you've got a problem, you want to proactively move a player off the field when you see a performance degradation, or you want to notify them that they have to pick up pace, etc. So with that said and done, technology needs exactly that same situation going. So, with the analogy of football, or use hockey, football, whatever's comfortable to you, rugby in your head, Linton is now going to go and jump into the stack and explain why we've picked this stack. And Linton, if you can grab it from here, and thanks, Ben.
So first and foremost, our talk on a technology basis is going to be very much around messaging and integration. We're not going to be touching on technology that touches infrastructure monitoring and whatnot, just messaging and integration. So we're going to be going through a problem statement, like what are the SAP operational issues that we've seen. We'll be highlighting what we deem as our perfect stack overview. We'll be running through that from SAP backend, through the integration platform, testing automation, and operational intelligence. Then I'll be passing it back to Dirk to handle some more of the people aspects, the testing aspects, and basically wrapping it up with some key takeaways. So on a C level, what do the top managers really care about in an SAP environment? They want to know, is my SAP system and systems around it, is it secure? Is it compliant? Are we proactively getting the correct SAP business events out? Also, are changes in the environment with all the CI/CD stuff happening around on the development landscape? Are any changes to code going to get caught? Any changes that could impact other interfaces, are they going to get proactively caught? And also, with an event-driven architecture in mind, we've got so much messaging flowing around. You know, how can we add on predictive analytics to know, hey, at month end we get the spike in volume. Let's scale up our cloud environment to actually handle that. You know, there's also cost savings and whatnot there. So this is our fantasy league team. This is the players we want to put onto our team to win on game day today. I'm going to dive into now where we see these players on the team from an architectural diagram point of view. So there's a lot to take in on this slide, and I'm sure you know, we're very open-minded, and I'm sure there are many technical people looking at this now and saying, well, you know, I disagree with this or that. But you know what? It sparks conversation, and that's also key. And at the end of the day, we want to get stable SAP ecosystem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and go through each of these layers, remembering we've got a key focus on SAP, messaging, and event-driven architecture here. So what you've seen typically, and remember, this is for a traditional customer out there in the market at the moment. So customers have engaged into moving onto cloud platforms like Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud Platforms. So with that said, you know, again, with the event-driven nature of this conversation, they already have tapped into that rich ecosystem of, you know, Azure Event Grid, Amazon Event Bridge, and all the lambdas and all those other technical goodies behind the scenes. So now we have typically put our SAP system onto that environment. Next thing, we needed to carefully have a data and logging fabric that is across and accessible across the board. So we want this fabric to be able to log calls with ServiceNow and support desk for Zendesk. We wanted SAP to easily be able to get its logs and insights into Splunk. So Splunk is our de facto data logging fabric in our environment. Next, customers are dabbling and using container platforms. Our chosen container platform of choice is Red Hat OpenShift. And these containers, microservices and a service environment, etc., they can also tap into Splunk with their different logging and tracing. Without further ado, I want to now pivot to the core focus is the event-driven architecture and observability in an SAP ecosystem. So I want to highlight the fairly new SAP Advanced Event Mesh as well as MeshIQ in these further slides. Years ago, when I've been doing SAP integration and technology in SAP space for over 20 years, and I've dabbled with numerous pieces of integration middleware. And Starless is a product that I've watched over the years, and I've really enjoyed, you know, using it and seeing how it works. And when I heard that SAP was going to be using it as the backbone for SAP Advanced Event Mesh, I was very excited, being an SAP person. And SAP's vision is to embed it into their overall SAP integration suite. So you can handle a lot of your high message volume traffic. It's got, SAP Advanced Event Mesh or Solus has got outstanding, integration to MQTT, third-party solutions. So this diagram here, without going through every block of it, you can kind of get a good feel for how, you got your traditional SAP iDocs perhaps or ABAP proxies flowing to SAP Integration Suite, but you can really get a feel for how these different stacks are kind of uniting into something special. So, when I looked at SAP Advanced Event Mesh, and I looked at this diagram of like a cluster with different cloud architectures. You've got Amazon, you've got Azure, and it looked to on the onset like, wow, this is quite a complicated thing to get set up. But in actual fact, with a couple of clicks, this whole ecosystem with local brokers, remote brokers, messages being published to a topic on broker number one, but being publicly available to all the other brokers in that mesh was outstanding. And it was something that I thought was very special. Coming from a IBM MQ and TIBCO, sort of like knowledge base, I'm finding that this type of platform is almost now the standard. This is what I want to compare everything else against. Moving to how do we've now got all these different messages flowing around. We've got all this great integration happening with, SAP Advanced Event Mesh and the event-driven ecosystem. Now, how do we go about monitoring this? Well, Dirk and I are very respectful, and at all the customers we've been at, we've seen that customers don't typically just have one specific platform. They will typically be running, banks are running IBM MQ, you've got TIBCO, you've got Java, all sorts of things lying around. Now, if we bolt on SAP Advanced Event Mesh, or you have Solus in your environment, MeshIQ seems like the perfect married partner to bring in as well. Because with it, you kind of get these awesome dashboards. And if I can just get your attention to the top tabs, you've got Kafka in there, IBM MQ, you've got Solus, and by default, this would be able to link into SAP Advanced Event Mesh anyway. And it really gives you that I've got control now over what's happening, what's going into the dead letter queues, how's the message volume tracking, what are the different thresholds happening, how can I plan ahead based on previous experience in this messaging ecosystem. So MeshIQ really gives us that comfort across different messaging tech. Now, I would like to move on to our Ronaldo, our star player in this game. INT4 Suite, and I mean that from an SAP integration point of view, okay? INT4 Suite kind of like blends everything together here, okay? When I talk about INT4 Suite, this is all testing automation. So if I can just say it, it's the only enterprise solution designed to guarantee the continuity of SAP integration flows recommended by SAP for integration platform testing. We term it our Rolls-Royce of SAP integration testing. Now, if I can just move your attention to the diagram on the right, to the bottom right, one very unique aspect of INT4 Suite is that it provides service virtualization. What do I mean by that? Well, you know what? Companies have got many B2B EDR partners. You might have other customers who you integrate with, but some of these customers and partners actually just have got production systems. They don't even have QA systems. So how do you, let's say you were doing an S4 project, an S4 SAP project, and you need to do all your EDR testing, but your business partners have only got production systems. So now what? Well, you know what? You need to now virtualize those environments or those other systems that you guys talk to as a QA system. They provide outstanding support with that. Now, if you look more at the diagram between the middleware and SAP, one thing that I'd like to really, really highlight here is that, when you get a green light or a red light in this environment, it can go as far as saying, besides testing the middleware, has this mapping work properly? Is the source message mapping to the target message, etc.? It goes further than that into, it can pick up if an ABAP code change that somebody else did in a different team has impacted your end-to-end test flow. And that to me is really, really important. As a technical person in SAP, I want to know, get that warm and fuzzy feeling that an ABAP code change done by some other team has also been picked up. So one thing, companies might be a bit scared and say, oh, this is going to be a massive, massive disruptive project. No, it's not, because you can actually, you can make this a technical project. It's a very non-disruptive tool set, meaning you don't need to have allocated functional and business resources involved. You can literally, it's got all the techniques to go and extract production messages, the source message, the target message out of production, bring it into its environment, and you can actually do a lot of these automated testing projects as a pure technical project, because you know that the data in those production messages as they stand right now is actually accurate. INT4 Suite, obviously by default, has got tight integration into SAP Solution Manager. It's involved with a lot of the SAP PO to SAP Integration Suite migrations. One important point I'd like to bring out is that it's not only limited to SAP middleware. It also does support Boomi, Web Methods, Azure Logic apps as well. IT4 Suite is, and IT as a company is a very, very forward-thinking company. They're well versed into what's happening with ChatGPT and all those AI aspects on how it can enhance and guarantee how things work in the actual mapping environment, for example. Here's a typical automated testing daily type of report, if you want to call it, where you can have your SAP integration suite, which, by the way, would be tying into your SAP Event Mesh, anyway. And this would be able to give you your, red, green warnings or whatnot on how are your actual end-to-end message flows working. SAP Key Insights. So guess what? SAP to many management people is just a black box. Nobody really logs onto SAP from a management point of view. So when manager A wants to know, hey, is my SAP system compliant? Is it secure? He'll tap on some technical person's shoulder and say, hey, why don't you go and run me this SAP report? And you kind of hope that things are okay. So if I can move your attention onto the left-hand side, Rondos have got Rondos are big SAP partners, but they also have got tight integration into Splunk. Okay, so essentially they are going to be we term it splunking out SAP information into Splunk, which can then get cut ServiceNow tickets, etc. So this screen here, if I can just move your attention to the left-hand side, this is a screenshot of PowerConnect as an ABAP add-on inside an SAP S4 system. Now, there's a lot of detail there. Okay. However, if you can imagine all the SAP basis or administrative type transactions where you can get historical user data, all the security insight into security threats, any compliance or SOX type reporting, all that stuff can get sent out to Splunk, and Splunk has got capabilities of doing regular expressions and all that sort of stuff that could then generate support tickets off of it. So the right-hand side is now just a typical view inside Splunk Enterprise, where we've now injected SAP data into a more easily and viewable and understandable means. One of the little gems that I found with PowerConnect, which I just want to highlight quickly, is certain events like SAP workflow events or change documents, that stuff's easy to get out of SAP. That's all good. However, certain things get hidden under the cover. For example, an SAP job might run, it might be green, and SAP bases look at the jobs every day and say, you know what, that job's all fine. However, that job could have been related to a invoice in this example, and that invoice might have gone into some sort of error. However, the job was green, but underlying in the underlying table, it's actually an error. So we don't want to wait for business or someone in like 5 days' time to say, hey, this is all wrong. What PowerConnect does is it can say real time, hey, if that field in that table gets a value of this, make it go to Splunk and log a ticket. And I've seen this in action, and it's awesome. Also, one of the forward thinking companies, they're very tightly aligned with SAP Business Technology Platform or SAP Cloud Platform. They link into all the different new products and tooling from SAP, and once again, pull out any errors. If your SAP integration suite has got some sort of errors on it, you can pull those out, log it to Splunk, log a ServiceNow ticket, and your operational team is moving. I'm now going to pass it back on to Dirk, who can follow us on further with the whole integration testing.
Thanks a lot, Linton. Yeah, I think I'm going to wrap up our conversation with two topics, which we're going to speak about proactive testing. I just want to highlight how important that is, because the old school of like, I'm doing testing, I deploy, and then I never test again. Well, that's gone, you know, with the new agile development methodologies, with the CI/CD pipeline, you know, continuous testing is really part of our way to move forward. And then lastly, I'm going to wrap up just on how to operate and run this. Like any sports team, you know, once you've kind of developed all your players and plays, you still have to get that team through the whole season. You have to manage them through the whole time. You have to get them to the events, etc. So there's a lot of admin there. We'll talk about that next. But firstly, I want to just reiterate the testing. Early problem detection and then the resolution of those issues is absolute key to a stable system. You know, you get improved stability of the system. As Linton said, you know, messages aren't getting lost, and a user phoning you, you can actually proactively let the user know if a feed is down, or you can fix it before the feed even goes down. So continuous testing is like absolutely key to the success of your ecosystem. So do not save money around the testing, and a sports team as well, you know, that you continue testing your plays throughout the season. You continue training. Don't stop that training or continuous training. And then obviously the ability to easily monitor any of these issues is really key. This will obviously lead to some cost savings and time savings, which obviously the C-suite would love. And what we've done is we've thrown a slide in here for you with just a few bullets that maybe when you have to do a presentation as a technologist to your C-suite, just gave you some ideas that you can run by your senior executives, because for them, they'd most probably look at it from a business perspective rather from a technology perspective. Then lastly, I want to kind of stop on operating models. You know, we tend to, in the old days, we'd sort of the OGs of the world, we'd have this operating model where we'd go offshore, we send all our data and management offshore, we do a big labor arbitrage play out there, and we get cheap services and everybody's happy. The problem with the new agile environments, it doesn't quite work like that. And today, if you really look at how the world sort of unfolds around operations, there's the simple operations, like the easy things to do, you know, to your level one things are relatively easy. You don't need a lot of high-end skills, and offshoring something like that is quite a good solution for you. You know, the help desk, the ticket raising, basic tickets, etc., escalating errors as they happen, maybe changing some password. Where it gets a bit more funky though is on level 2 to 4 support. Here we've got a whole different environment sitting that needs to be dealt with. So you've got your AMS, or application maintenance and support aspects, which have to be done. These are people that have to be more skilled or highly skilled in some cases, and they must be available to you when you need them. And they must know your system. You can't just go do system changes if you don't understand the system. You know, one of the things, you know, that we've experienced with Linton and his team, our people don't move around. They stay with the same clients over an extended period of time. So not only do they know the technology, but they also know what that client's trying to achieve, and then therefore easily diagnose a problem. Then obviously with the agile methodologies and stuff, business users and business owners really want to be part of the process of solving problems or have an understanding what's going on. Having offshore resources very often create communication issues, time differences, and it becomes kind of tricky to communicate over email. We know how that works. There's a lot of frustration with that for many of us that have worked in that space. And then lastly, I think what's important is in SEV 1 and SEV 2 environments where your production is down or severely affected, you do not want a B player trying to fix a SEV 1 or SEV 2 problem. You want dedicated people that know your system, that are highly specialized. Now, if you then look at this picture, you really say to yourself, well, there's some things that you have to keep in mind when you pick your operational support strategy. Now, first one is obviously, like I said, the labor arbitrage. You know, your procurement department would love for you to have a great labor arbitrage, but those labor arbitrage differences that were 5 to 1, 10 to 1 in the old days, they don't exist anymore. You know, offshoring is not as cheap as it was, but all the problems still remain. You know, the offshore companies will tell you average price of a resource, and they compete with the local resources, but that's not really effective because you're measuring the lower level 1 resources at a low cost and injecting them into the resources that you really need at the critical times. And they will end up charging you anyway for those critical times, but you will think you're going in low. So once again, focus on the critical aspects of your operation, and you can outsource the low cost somewhere else. Contracting with offshore is very complex. There's now a lot of companies like ourselves that offer dedicated resources for you. You don't have to buy them 724. They're not long-term contracts. They're renewable contracts. They don't have a lot of SLAs and penalties in. I would suggest that you look at one of these companies for your high-end needs so that you don't pay for resources 724, 365. You want to buy them when you need them, and you need them on a contingency basis. So nearshoring is something that we really think you should consider, near or onshore resources, but instead of paying 40 hours a week for those people, you just buy some contingency hours from an organization with the right skills that is dedicated to you. And then obviously you have to fit into the agile environment. So with that said and done, those are little things that we wanted to highlight to you. And then just in summary, select the right players, get the right stack, engage the right coaches, make sure you've got the right team sitting around you and operating this. Make sure your game plan or your operating support strategy is 100% thought through and executed to precision. You know, keep monitoring your game. Like, you cannot stop monitoring the game because you put a team on the field. That team needs to be proactively managed through the game, through the season. So proactive testing, I'm going to reiterate, extremely important. And then you need the tools to have insight in what's happening in your system, where the events are flowing, what's happening, where the errors are, where the slowdowns are. So co-location of your operational support partners is key to that success. So with that said and done, I'd like to thank everybody for attending this call. Linton and myself are available via our website or through the event organizers. Please post any questions you have in the chat here, and we'd be happy to respond to you afterwards if you give us contact details, or we will post in the chat here afterwards. We'll try and answer your questions wherever we can. You're always invited for a coffee or online chat with either of us if you want to change our mind. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.